discussion, hopefully. But also important to be mindful of potentially there might be some diversity and different perspectives as well. So, okay, so let's get started with the introduction of our presenter today. And our presenter today will be Michaela McHenry-Powell. Michaela wears many hats and has many credentials as well. She is the clinical director of the Integrated Behavioral Technologies, or IBT, and the Northeast Kansas Autism Specialist. She holds a temporary mastery level psychology licensure and is a Kansas Institute of Positive Behavioral Support trained PBS facilitator. So she has been working with a lot of agencies to work on PBS training across the state of Kansas. She has rich experience implementing behavioral supports to families and children with challenging behaviors and providing training and consultation to child care facilities, early learning centers on the use of PBS. And she also has a lot of interest in working with children, early learners, with a variety of diagnoses, including developmental disabilities, anxiety, mood disorders, OCD, and other behavioral disorders. And she is also a trained OASIS parent coach. So she loves to, use behavioral analysis to support families across the state of Kansas. So without further ado, Ms. Michaela, it's your presentation time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Alice, what a wonderful introduction. I'm flattered. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with all of you tonight, and I hope to provide some good tools for you guys and have fun, because like Alice mentioned, there's a small group of us, and hopefully we'll get to have some in-depth presentation discussion. So Megan, if you want to flip to the next slide for me. Perfect. This is a story link. We have been given the opportunity by this grant project to provide your story, if you so choose, to the state. So from here, we will be able to get more information for you guys and give the state our opinion and our voice. So if you look in the chat, hopefully we'll be able to get that link for you guys. Cassie, if you can't, let me know and I can get it in there for you. But we really want to learn how to support Kansas families with what they are struggling with. Really quickly, Megan, if you want to flip to the new screen to show them what that looks like. Hold on real quick. Thank you guys for being patient. I'm going to share this. This is what that page looks like. It's where you can give a 5 to 10 minute story or give some insights or struggles, which I really love, to help our Tomorrow Story Bank and give our feedback to the state. All right, thanks for bearing with me while I switch roles back. Perfect, thank you, Alice, for doing that. All right, Meg, you're good. So we're gonna go ahead and get to our overview of our next slide. Hopefully. Megan's helping me out here. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the principles of behavioral science. We're going to be talking about specific techniques for teaching calm cooperation and really trying to figure out what calm cooperation is for all of us. We're going to learn about overcoming fears with our children, teaching them how to do it themselves, as well as building a positive, deeper relationship with them and strong connections. And lastly, we're going to be discussing some solutions for solving problem behaviors. here's where it gets fun. As we introduce you guys to the principles of behavior science, I want to start off with a quote. So we live in an era when research tells us that the teacher is probably the single most important factor affecting student achievement, at least the single most important factor that we can do much about. So I want to emphasize that some of this text is actually bolded and underlined, which is important. And I do want to touch on the teacher. It is taken from an educational research article, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that a teacher doesn't only mean an educator, but a teacher can be anyone who is giving knowledge to someone else, or a learner, a client, a child, another adult, for somebody who is teaching them to engage differently. I want to go to the chat real quick and get your guys' opinions. What do you guys think it means when the quote says, the single most important factor that we can do much about? What are the thoughts out there about this quote and what that specific sentence means? The single most important factor that we can do much about. So if you have a thought, go ahead and type it in the chat and we can discuss that. Beautiful. Love it. I love the responses that are rolling in. It's talking about the educators, talking about the teachers being important. Again, teacher doesn't necessarily mean that it is an educator in an academic brick and mortar setting, but the teacher being what we would call a provider or a caregiver or anybody who is giving their knowledge to help the individual grow and achieve their dream, whatever that is. Where the single most important factor, like Alice, I think she mentioned in here, we can provide training. As a consultant and somebody who loves parent training, what I can change is the teacher's behavior and how that evokes what they would like to see from their learner. So I can give feedback to that person who is giving their knowledge so that that knowledge can be imparted for the best way that the learner can receive it. So we can make sure that we are, yes, Tori, people who teach are very essential to how things grow and move forward, because we can change our behavior to help our community grow as a collective. Awesome. So as we move on to our next slide, I want to introduce positive behavior supports. All of these things on this particular slide under the principles of behavior science come under a broad approach, organizing physical, social, educational, biomedical, and logistical supports to achieve basic lifestyle goals while reducing problem behavior. That's the point of PBS, but that's a really long definition. So in short, it's using proactive strategies to help shape, modify, reinforce behaviors that are occurring within the environment or new behaviors we need to teach that we can provide a consequence for, whether positive or negative. So to increase that reinforcement or increase the likelihood that that behavior will happen again, or decrease punishment strategies where that behavior is less likely to occur again. So that is really the overarching goal of PBS, where we don't want to lose sight that behavior is learned. So when we're growing up, we see a lot of different things within different environments. We all come from different backgrounds and cultures, and different things are important to our families. We're not all the same. So we take in that information, what is being modeled for us, and in turn we imitate it or do that same behavior because that is what we saw for so long. So behavior is related to our social environmental factors. That being said, whatever pressures come from the environment, we're seeing a lot of this nowadays with poverty, with racial and ethnic differences, and we're looking at politics and we're seeing lots of those different things. I don't want to lose also that behavior isn't only problem behavior. So we're not only seeing that and just labeling behavior as problems, but behavior can be as simple as breathing or blinking our eyes. Behavior is objective because we define it that way, and it's measurable because we can see it. So that's what we are going off of for the definition of behavior at this point. We can change behavior related to our environmental factors and things that influence our behavior. They'll call me the environmental arrangement queen at work because I love to set up environments that will create the outcome that I need that is least restrictive for my learners. So going and teaching families how to set up a bedroom or set up their learning environment or different arrangements for the dining room table where their child can enjoy the meal that they have prepared and eat together. Giving those little changes can really make a difference when we're thinking about reinforcing appropriate behavior, because behavior can change. So we know that behavior takes the path of least resistance. It's like fluvial erosion. One of my biggest mentors uses that phrase very frequently when she's training. I can lead a horse to water and make it drink because of the reinforcement that I know that it needs or it's desiring. So same thing with sitting at the table. I can help the learner sit at the table and have mom and dad and all the other family around us to help change the behavior together in the community. We are not innately born bad. So there's sometimes where we think that just because we're acting that way or that child may be acting that way, oh, you didn't learn and you are behaving poorly. We're not going to look at behaviors as good versus bad. We're going to look at them overall as just atypical things that happen for each individual learner. And how we modify it should be appropriate based on what the learner wants and their family, the community. And it has to be effective. So we should be working together to create an appropriate and effective plan for behavior change, with hopefully using more reinforcement strategies and replacement behavior, which we'll talk about a little bit next. Perfect. All right. So here you can see, this is the quality of life indicators. The domains of quality of life are on the left, and they're beautiful. These are things that we sometimes forget about when we're programming as consultants or when we're looking at person-centered plans. There are so many different indicators within the domains that we forget that give a well-rounded quality of life. So when we're looking at reinforcement, using it to its full potential and powers, we have to know what systems need to be put in place or things that may be lacking for that individual that could impede the value of the reinforcer. I would like to point out sometimes interpersonal relationships, relationships with others, or having a support network. There could be so much stress for our emotional well-being. Right now, we're all in the middle of a pandemic. So there are some things that really impede typical reinforcement, as it used to be super rewarding for us, but now it's really punished. I like to think of going out. I used to go karaoke singing, and this happens in our adult life too, where we can't do that anymore because of the social and environmental factors that are occurring within our everyday life. So keeping this quality of life domains in the forefront of your brain as we're thinking about reinforcement will help you when working later on with your child. All right, Meg, you're good. All right, so lastly, before our before like a fun little thing activity that we have, just to give a brief wraparound, applied behavior science and the use of evidence-based practices, meaning that if there's data, if we can define it so it's objective and measurable and everybody can see the same thing and everybody's on the same page, that's evidence-based practices. So if we're using the things that we had already talked about, we are looking at the person-centered plan that we're creating for that individual. We're keeping in mind those quality of life domains. That is what PBS is, which is a beautiful wraparound approach that can be used within facilities like early learning centers. It's been widely used in elementary school settings. And in Kansas, which I absolutely love, we're still using it today in juvenile corrections. So it is not just for, applied behavior science is not just for kids with autism, but as Alice so wonderfully introduced me, like it can work for individuals with OCD, a variety of comorbid diagnoses. So it's wonderful when working with clients, but it also can be really motivating for staff and people that are within the community itself to promote a healthy relationship with others and an overall quality of life for everybody. Now I'd like to address your attention to the pyramid model, which is on the right. I'm going to explain PBS and the domains that it's broken up into before our little quiz. We have our bottom tier, that green universal, beautiful tier right there. 80% of the population within a facility, within a school, an organization falls in this universal category. So when we think about positive behavior supports, we want to give expected behaviors with clear consequences, positive and negative, that are standard for everyone to engage in when you are in that facility. And when you do get to engage in those things, you are intermittently reinforced for doing the desired behavior. In a lot of schools, there's a money exchange system in the kids' place that I help run, a part of Integrated Behavioral Technologies. Our early learning center uses a token economy system. So when the child or children group engages in the desired behaviors, they get tokens for their behavior that they get to exchange for fun little treats and rewards. So we're really using that power of reinforcement to help a group dynamic function together, which is so wonderful to get to see children learning in an all-inclusive environment. Secondly is this yellow tier, our targeted tier. This is about 15% of our population that we see within a facility. It is with those individuals who might need a group-oriented instruction. So more specific or fine tuning on specific social skills. We can see this in academics, so our Title I reading classes, mathematics, where just that little bit of extra help would be needed. We might stick kiddos who struggle in the same area together so we can remediate those skills in the targeted approach. Sometimes this could be with behaviors as well. So for children who struggle with problem behaviors, rather, working on skills to increase coping mechanisms. This would be a good use of our targeted interventions of support when we're looking at behavior sciences and PBS. And lastly, our individualized tier, that's the 5% of population within a facility. It's those who get individualized education plans or those who receive one-on-one therapy of any kind or any specific one-on-one support that might be needed from like an SLP, OT, so anything that ranges. So thank you, Megan, you're on it. You can go ahead and change the slide. And I'm working with the population that I have. If you remember that triangle, it normally faces up where the 5% is up in that tippy top. I know I just changed it. Most places in the rural communities that I work with, our individual level of support, thank you, Meg, is that red area. And that's probably about 70 to 80% of our population because of need and what is going on within our rural communities, such as poverty. Some of those other quality of life standards are really low. So those targeted interventions are really crucial for some of the families that I have worked with and individuals I've worked with in the field. All right. So we are doing good. We have about 5 minutes to take a question break. So what questions are out there before we hop into this fun quiz? We can type them into the chat box, or if no one has any questions, that's okay. We can keep chugging. Not seeing any questions. Is there any conversation or discussion? I can unmute you if you say, I have something. All right, there is a question in the chat I see. So how does the universals work in family? So how does the universal support work in the community and family setting? Is that right? Is that your question, Linda?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I want to put in universals, what, like for my family, like what does that mean?
That's a great question. So when we're looking at that system, and when we're putting in a universal level of support, we want to come together as a collective and determine what those expectations are for your family in general. So kind of like house rules, I would say, like these are the expectations where we're going to be respectful, be responsible, caring, and then together after we have kind of given a overarching expectation, what do each of those expectations look like, and then create rules based on what those different expectations are. So for us being responsible in our school age classroom environment, it's that we will keep our classroom clean. That is being responsible. So we're associating that with specific behaviors that then the children can be reinforced for. So I like to think if my 13-year-old keeps his room clean, because that was an expected behavior, he took his laundry downstairs, he is then given a reward that we have previously agreed on. So some families do allowances. Just like you are paid to go to work, they're paid to do their chores. Sometimes it's just that special one-on-one time. Like, hey man, I noticed that you did all of your expectations. Let's go, hang out and play your favorite video game for 5 minutes. So that's how our universal system can be set up to where there's common expectations and rules and specific behaviors that are rewarded. Nice, good question. In the chat, it says, can you talk about token systems more? How this is not a bribe? Of course, that is so fun, Cassie, because that leads into the quiz that is we'll do next. So token economy is a part of a system that indicates a schedule of reinforcement. Sometimes when we first start teaching new skills, we have a consistent or continuous reinforcement schedule. So let's say I have tokens and it is a 8 system token board. My child, every time they respond in the absence of problem behavior or with the desired behavior, sometimes I'll throw in like, wow, thanks for doing a behavior you already should be doing, like sitting with your booty in your chair. I will give tokens for those. And when I complete that token chart where it's all filled up, then they can earn their reinforcer or that larger selection that they have made. This is not a bribe because it is contingent upon the child responding with appropriate behavior. So if I'm giving them a token, they have earned that token by engaging in what is expected of them, rather than saying, if you, I will give you X if you engage in the behavior. So we're looking at it as we're giving them the expected behavior, what they should be doing. And then they get that reward in the end. Oops. Yes, it would definitely be like a goal. I think that that is what you're trying to ask, Linda. I asked you to unmute if you want to explain more. I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow
Yeah,
what your
no.
question is.
Yeah, just like a follow-up to the question about tokens,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, here's another one. But to follow up with that, like giving tokens, it's kind of like getting check marks, and like you get so many check marks, and you reach a goal. And so, or just like you have a task to do, and you have your to-do list for the day, and you're checking it off, and you reach your goal where you have all your tasks done. It's like it's reinforcing because now you have free time. So so it seems to me like using tokens is teaching our kids like how to set a goal and how to work towards that goal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
here's another one from Tori. She says, I don't understand how I can consistently keep up a schedule. Life is really busy. Could you give any kind of schedule tips?
That's a
Self-management.
great
Yeah.
question. Yeah. So, Tori, if you're talking about for you, we're actually having another parent cafe on under our maintaining routine and getting routine in your life in pandemic edition. So that will be discussed more in a future parent training, and where I go in depth on how to kind of figure out all of those things you have to manage. Great. Is that all the questions that were out there? I think so.
I think so.
Perfect. All right, as you guys can see, I switched really quickly over to our fun activity. We're only going to do 2 questions. If you guys would like, part of this fun parent cafe is that if you answer this fun power of reinforcement myths and misconceptions survey monkey, and you submit your responses and have 80 to 100% accuracy, your name is entered in for a drawing to have a printed workbook for this particular power of reinforcement, where you have help with creating a hierarchy of reinforcers. You get reinforcer assessment packet, so you can go through and really assess some of those reinforcers that you may have forgot about that your child likes, or giving you more ideas on what you could provide as reinforcement for your children. And lastly, doing an evaluation of a problem behavior that you would like to reduce and replace with an alternative behavior, or start reinforcing an incompatible behavior. But you get a free consultation, one with me, if you choose to do this. So I'm going to kind of give you a taste of what it's like. And we can, I'll share this link in our chat so you guys can have it for after the presentation. All right, so we're going to answer true or false. We can do this in our chat. I think that'd be super fun. Or if you are snazzy, I think and you can do a thumbs up with your Zoom. I'm not quite sure how to do it, but we can still work on the chat. But you're going to answer true or false to the following questions regarding potential myths and misconceptions that you have heard or read about behavior science. So for the first one, you guys are going to get a freebie for the first two. So PBS utilizes behavior strategies that consist of M&Ms and bribery. True or false? You can put it in the chat. Perfect. All right, so some of us out here say true. Well, let's pick this apart. Oh, whoops. Are you sure? Okay, well, it's okay if you change your mind. I just want to talk to you and see why you think that, because it's quite interesting. But if you're just kidding. Just kidding.
No, please talk about it.
Okay. Yes. So as we just talked about with bribery, their behavior has to be contingent upon, they get something contingent upon the behaviors they actually engage in, rather than us using that contingency or reward first to entice them and get them to do the activity. So we're not creating work ethic that way. But I don't know about you guys, but M&Ms are not like super awesome for me, like in reinforcement mode. Like they're okay, and I can get down on some M&Ms sometimes, but M&Ms are not the only part of behavioral strategies. They're the easiest, and I love them. But variety of different reinforcers is what we want to have, and we want to make sure we're doing a preference assessment for our learner or individuals involved, families, children. Alice says M&M's not for her either. So we want to keep those in mind as we're moving forward and creating our reinforcers for our kids. Let's see. Number 2, direct instruction should only be used by animal trainers. True or false? Go ahead and type that in our chat box. Nice work, guys. Now you know how to do it. So that is a false answer. So direct instruction is just clearly giving an instruction. Normally it's to teach a specific task, can be done in a small group setting or one-on-one to teach specific skills and increase skill acquisition as well. It's pretty fast-paced and typically scripted too. So it's pretty nice for newer providers or caregivers where it can be scripted, or sometimes it does not have to be scripted as well. There is a question in the chat box that says, I can see it for kids that are impaired, but shouldn't kids that are smart be able to figure it out? I'm not entirely for sure what you are looking for with like being able to figure it out. Linda, would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's sometimes like I hear people talk about direct instruction, but shouldn't kids that are smart already be able to figure it out by themselves?
So if we're looking at a specific skill that we're trying to get them to engage in, we all learn differently. We all have different teaching types or modalities that we like to learn in or from. So we can't just expect us to automatically learn those behaviors, which is where direct instruction actually comes in. For those who may have trouble figuring certain aspects of math out, we'll teach that specific element directly to the student. Because we're all not 100% perfect, even though we like to think we are sometimes. There's all of us who have skill deficits or behavioral excesses, where we need that little extra piece of help, where direct instruction can get us remediated and our skills acquired quickly. for us to be a part of the least restrictive environment. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Cool. Back to our PowerPoint. So you can go ahead and answer those questions, and you'll be entered into a one-on-one consultation with me. All right. Thank you all for waiting so patiently while I switch different screens. There we go. All right, so we've been talking a whole bunch about preference for our kids or the people that we're caring for. But we know discipline and good behavior are keys to family harmony. But do you feel a little bit left out as a parent? Because I know sometimes I do. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to figure out and like keep up to date with what's reinforcing for my 13-year-old. I have a 5-year-old. They're running me crazy. But, you know, in this meme, it says, so my husband and I do everything our children tell us to, because it's just easier that way, I guess. And that's what we're supposed to do to keep harmony. Psh, no, we're going to learn how to keep you back in the driver's seat as a parent. There's a lot of different confusing, conflicting information out there that we hope that these parent cafes can help kind of clean up for you, because if we can understand how the power of reinforcement works, it really gives our caregivers themselves back. They can be the driver again and have good instructional control, as we would say. We want to make sure that our kids understand that we mean what we say what we mean, and that's what we're going to do. And we have collective and calm cooperation. So, what is calm cooperation? So if we can go back to the chat and get people involved, I want to see what thoughts are out there and what people think calm cooperation is. Thank you, Cassie, for participating. I love it. Great. I love these responses. Ooh, we're getting close. All right. So you guys have brought up some wonderful things in the chat. So Cassie, I'm going to talk about you first since you commented first. Not getting mad. I love this one because when I was practicing and talking to some other colleagues of mine while doing this, we can tell us what calm cooperation is not supposed to look like because it doesn't meet our societal standards to not or to get mad. We don't want to get mad when we're calmly cooperating. I love how Linda mentioned that we want our kids to do what we ask them to do calmly. But what is calmly? Following directions with a calm body, calm voice, using it in a calm tone of voice is something that Tori mentioned. So really what we're talking about with calm cooperation, this is when you and your child or children, your family system, are both under the same understanding of what the expectations are for your environment, for what you're going to do when you engage in a big behavior or big emotion that you might feel, and what is expected of your child to do if they need to engage in or experience a big emotion. So calm cooperation is just something that I threw together with my colleagues because it really is up to the family dynamic and what is going to be the best description for them. Yes, Cassie, we can look at it as setting an example for our kids or modeling what is expected of them. But we come together with these calm cooperations together prior to behaviors happening or conflicts arising. We have to set up our barriers and boundaries as a family unit before we move forward with changing other problem behavior, because we all have to have something that we're working for too. That's that universal level of support where we're maintaining together as a collective. All right. So when we are working on calm cooperation, if there are specific behaviors you want your family to engage in, especially when they're having is what my family calls a big emotion, we have to have this learning happen when the others are calm or when the child is calm. So as an example, my 5-year-old, he has my anxious features at times. And so he'll become very overwhelmed or frustrated, as he says, because he is vocal. We have taught him when he gets upset what his body feels like and doing a body scan with him. So we had to discreetly or to give direct instruction for my son to understand how he was feeling. And then once he could identify how he was feeling, we then transferred him to his room, where he would then have a space that he can have a calm place to calm down and engage in coping strategies that we taught. And our family chose to take 10. So taking 10 deep breaths to reset and get that out of that fight, flight, freeze mode. We don't want to be in that. So we can come back and cooperate together as a family to overcome or work through this big emotion he was having. So at 5 years old, I now have a kiddo who takes a break independently. Yep, diaphragmatic breathing, Erin, that is what it's called. And so he is able to be reinforced for having and engaging in calm cooperation, because those are our family expectations. So we have, fun family game night on Friday nights. They work for having paint night. So it doesn't have to be always something is given to your child, because we say the attention is the currency of childhood. And good research tells us that it's 5 minutes per day of good close connection helps you maintain good reinforcement with your children and good rapport, being involved with them. So calm cooperation is really what you make it to be as a family unit. So how in the heck do I teach these desired behaviors? So I want to give a disclaimer really quickly as we move on. This is not a formal evaluation for your child. So any additional information that I'm providing you, like a reinforcer assessment, an outline for how to develop a reward hierarchy for your family child, if you're doing something specific, these are just forms to assist your knowledge and have additional information that you can give to a behavior specialist or a professional who can help start a conversation with you about other guidance that you might need when working through this. So I will be sending out, if you supply your email address at the end, a link to a document for the variety of different reinforcers that you can assess with your child and just kind of see, oh, do they like that? Do they not? From there, I also have a little sheet called the reward hierarchy form, where you can build a structure so it's easily visible. It's fun to hang on the refrigerator for everyone to see. Or your child knows, like, okay, my 10 is like, this is my least preferred things. For me, it would be those M&Ms we were talking about earlier, where my number 1 would be a spa date, getting a back massage, because that's like my number 1 as an adult. So we have to develop that hierarchy because they're all different kinds of rewards. But then once we determine what is motivating and reinforcing for us, we have to determine the function of the undesired behavior, because problem behavior is always fun, right, parents? Woo! I'm hoping everybody on the back end is laughing at me. because I love working through challenging behavior. I think it is so much fun. Thank you, Dr. Linda, for laughing. I appreciate you. So it's a nice punny for us. So we have created, and this will come out in a link as well, a way for you to do a quick check on functions of behavior. There are 4 functions of behavior. We're going to talk about those a little bit more in depth. But from this parental checklist, we are able to give targeted interventions for you as the family members, like to propose to you to amp up your game and change some of the contingencies based on the rewards or the reinforcers that you find new, give you some ideas based on the environment from what you answer on those that questionnaire that we're going to give you to help analyze your child's behavior. And lastly, we're always going to evaluate our reinforcers. Sometimes we just get sick of those things that we have already. So like, I love being on social media sometimes and scrolling and getting lost, but that's not always my primary mode of reinforcement. I'm not going to want to get on my phone all the time when I just spent 2 hours lecturing to you guys, no offense. But I want to turn off my electronics at that point. I am satiated. So we want to make sure we're always keeping it fun and fresh so our kids aren't getting annoyed with us and or getting the same thing delivered over and over again. Also, we want to look at how frequently we're delivering that reinforcer. So if we're not giving them that reinforcer enough, they may not actually engage in that behavior. Remember how I said earlier, behavior takes the path of least resistance. You're making it really hard for us to get this new reinforcer. So we have to be mindful about how quickly or delayed we're giving our reinforcement, which a behavior specialist can absolutely help you do. All right, sorry about that. We're going to come back and talk about the reasons why we're really looking at a function-based analysis or a function-based approach to our reduction of problem behavior. It has shown to be the most effective. If we are looking at why the child is engaging in problem behavior, we can figure out how to reinforce or get them to that same function by doing it differently in a more appropriate way. It leads us to use more reinforcement-based procedures. Who wants to be nagging all the time or yelling at their kid or using punishment strategies? I get sick of it when I live in a world of negativity around me all day. I would rather give a shout out to somebody with how amazing that they're doing than focusing on the negative that they're actually doing and engaging in when they're engaging in problem behavior. Which makes me really happy because we're changing the dynamic of our community and increasing quality of life. So knowing that and having that when you go into a professional, the professional can help you outline a behavior intervention plan that works for your family and cultivating a difference within your community. And they're going to monitor it and give really good evaluations. So in my organization, we meet roughly every 2 weeks. We discuss the data, we analyze the data, whether it's a skill that we're needing to teach or look to see if it's improving or that problem behavior is decreasing. We need to make sure we have a good handle on what we are implementing and how it's impacting that individual and their quality of life. Is this intervention changing behavior and keeping it consistently changed in a good way that we want it to the desired outcome? Yes, awesome. But also taking in consideration how it's impacting the individual. If the individual is really struggling to engage with that replacement behavior, we might need to make some modifications. And we're really going to do that through the evaluation phase and analysis of our data collection. So how do we stop problem behavior? So hi, Johnny. He sees the path of least resistance, so he's going to walk across problem behavior lane. It's clearly paved for him, and he gets his reinforcer. But why are you engaging in this problem behavior? Well, before we can even get there, if you are a punisher as a parent, you ain't getting nowhere. If you do not have that deep connection with your child, or as we call it in our field, establish yourself as a generalized conditioned reinforcer, then good luck, because the power of reinforcement is not in your favor. We have to be with our kids and see where they are. We comment on what they're playing or what they're doing. We're not giving instruction. We're just loving them for being them. Yes, Alice, we're building positive relationships with the children in mind. We get more that way as well. I love it when my son comes up to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder just because I'm mom. That's the same relationship you should have with your child. Being aware of what they're doing, what their reinforcers are. By if you're doing that preference assessment and building that hierarchy, you're exploring their world with them, and giving your love non-contingently on anything. So they're just breathing, and you just get to live in that for a moment. By doing that, and like I mentioned, 5 minutes can change the entire outlook of your relationship with your child. So once you have a good solid rapport, now we can talk about how to stop this problem behavior, because Johnny, and we have our trustee hierarchy that we have developed. He's got his moderately preferred reinforcers here. He's chilling, he's all right. He's got some M&Ms in his bag, maybe his cool iPad, but his reinforcer over here is that, I need to go, jump on my trampoline outside. That's really fun. If he's engaging in problem behavior or undesired behavior, we have to put that on extinction. We have to let that meteorite fall on that problem behavior and extinguish it like the dinosaurs. Because if we do not, we just continue that reinforcement pattern that when I throw a tantrum and get to hitting my mom, she's going to let me go outside because she doesn't want to deal with me and I get to jump on my trampoline. Well, Johnny, that's not how it's going to work. We're going to teach you an appropriate way to get to that trampoline. And we're going to do that by teaching you or figuring out the function. And from there, teaching a replacement behavior that is similar to that function. So you're still getting access to that or getting your desired outcome with that appropriate behavior or replacement behavior that we're going to be teaching and reinforcing. Awesome. Did I answer your question, Cassie? Cool. Thank you guys. As I'm flipping back and forth between the chat, making sure I'm not missing anything. I'm liking that back and forth style. Because it really is all fun and games until someone figures out the function of your behavior. Because darn it, now they might change it if they don't like it. We all kind of come into those situations. I'm late and I'm needing to get to work on time, so I'm going to speed. And that is really reinforcing, and I am rewarded when I am on time, and maybe even 2 minutes early because I went 80 and a 75. But there's other consequences for those behaviors as well. I apologize. This is a lot of information on this particular slide, but this is just another evidence-based treatment or therapy modality that helps give a deeper positive connection for families, especially for kiddos who have fears or other anxieties. This is also seen for teachers as well. So the first one is parent-child interaction therapy, or PCIT. Dr. Linda, 80 and a 55. Nice. We also have teacher-child interaction therapy. Both of these treatment modalities really take into consideration social learning principles. So what I talked about at first with our behavior sciences and everything being related to our environment, we're looking at that but we're also looking at attachment and trying to teach parents how to engage in authoritative style parenting. Because what has been shown, when we are calm, when we set boundaries, have structure, we see fewer problem behaviors. Why? Because our children know what is the expected behavior that they should be engaging in. And they know the outcome that is supposed to happen from me, as well as the outcome that they need to engage in. So long-term, PCIT and TCIT has shown to improve mental health across a lot of different clinical populations, where PCIT and TCIT stops or interrupts that cycle of that escalating behavior. All I think about is my 13-year-old that I like to fight with. It's that counter control, back and forth, escalating. We don't have to do that anymore. We can set limits. We can give expectations and boundaries that they can push in, because choice is also good. And PCIT helps create that strong, secure attachment that allows us to give consistent discipline, where discipline also does not have to be looked at as good or bad, but just guiding and leading to a good, disciplined human, and improving mental health and for the parents and the children, which is why I love PCIT, especially with our current climate. Yes, it is rooted in behavior analysis. Thank you. And it does have a big emphasis on reinforcement as well. So we want to catch our kids being good. We want to catch, and pay our children and each other in the behaviors we want to see, which is super important, because I want to get caught being good. I don't want to get caught going 80 and a 55. So I want, money off my tags next year, Mr. Officer, for driving the speed limit, right? So it has to be functionally related, which I love that PCIT and TCIT all do, as well as focusing on what is expected. So now we are getting into our solution-focused behavior. So really thinking about the treatment for the function of behavior. So if we're going to look at attention, as I mentioned earlier, attention is the currency of childhood, and it is human, the human condition that we are social. Tori, I will get back to your question in just a moment. That's a beautiful question. Let's see. So if we are looking at attention, we want to make sure that our environment is stimulating for them. Kids are gonna ask for attention a lot, especially if their environment is boring. So we want to make sure that they have toys that they like to play with. They may not be their most top preferred that we did in our hierarchy or when we're teaching our replacement skills, but we've got some pretty cool toys out and pretty cool games and the engaging environment of learning and exploration. We want to teach them a way to appropriately get our attention if they want us to engage with them. So we have to teach a child how to say, play with me, or my favorite, excuse me, Miss Michaela, or even simply touching me or tapping my shoulder. That's where it can even start. Or sometimes even just walking up to me. We've started there before too, when children don't have that good eye contact with us. So as long as it's related to the individual, that it increases their quality of life, we teach that replacement behavior so they can have immediate access to what that function is. So if they're trying to get my attention, I'm going to give them that attention when they're doing it appropriately. But if they're engaging in problem behavior, I'm not going to attend to the inappropriate behavior. So I'm going to go back to Tori's question, isn't ignoring the client kind of rude? Absolutely. And when we're talking about ignoring, we're talking about ignoring the undesired behavior. we are maybe commenting about what the child is doing or what they need to be doing in a neutral voice. I'm waiting for you to have your hands in your lap, your legs are crisscrossed, and you have a bubble in your mouth. And my clients know, or we have our mouth closed. And when they're sitting ready like that, they're showing me that then they can have my attention. Because that's how they're demanding for my attention, because that's the expectation that I gave. Or if they're engaged in play situation, I'm actually playing with them and engaging with them when they're doing things appropriately. But I'm not ignoring them as a child or the client. I'm just ignoring the inappropriate behavior. Does that help, Tori? Yep. Awesome. We're going to ignore the behavior, not the child. So this is how they're going to get it. Our environment is set up that is somewhat rewarding. We see that we've got some moderately preferred toys. This is no longer the best option. We have to take a detour because there's a block in the way. So that would be our replacement behavior of us no longer attending to that inappropriate behavior. So that client is then getting that function of attention appropriately. So I'm going to take that detour to get attention. Same thing with tangible. I'm going to have my preferred toys available, but I'm going to make sure that if they want that specific or most highly preferred item that they're holding in their hand or anything that they can manipulate with any extremity, I want to make sure I have that removed. So that they have to ask or demand for it in the behavior sciences vernacular, as we would say, they have to request to have it. So if they want that preferred toy or that fun activity that you have, they have to request that as well. And if they were to engage in any other problem behavior, we would not let them gain access to it unless they requested appropriately to get it. Same thing, it's no longer an option. I've got a block in my path, so my least invasive way to get to what I want is using my appropriate behavior. Now, escape. As we talk about this, I know our time is ending quickly. This one is really important. Three-step prompting cannot be utilized across all environments. We learned that in childcare. As Cassie just pointed out in the chat, before you hop off, I would love for you to fill out our REDCap survey and get us some more information for our grant. That would be greatly appreciated. But using three-step prompting, we're going to use a vocal prompt first. We're going to give our instruction again. We might gain the attention of our learner a little bit better. Make sure that we're making eye contact with them, and we're going to give that instruction. If they choose not to follow that instruction again, I'm going to take it up a notch. I'm going to gesture to where they need to go, or I'm going to model the expected behavior that they need to be engaging in because I gave them a specific instruction to do so. So if I asked you to get up off of the couch, walk to the kitchen sink and do the dishes, that would be the expected behavior I would like you to engage in. So I'm going to stand up off of the couch and I'm going to walk into there to model what is expected of you. And then I'm going to ask you to do that same instruction again. I need you to go do the dishes. And so after I gave my instruction, I'm going to have them go to the sink again. If they do not follow after a model prompt, physical prompting can be used. So if physical prompting is not an option, we have our restart corner in our early community childcare facility. You can implement, and at home in my house, we have a break rather than using physical prompting, depending on what we're asking to do. But we will assist the learner. However, we can safely to engage in the instruction we did give. Now, if the child is engaging in a coping strategy or they're engaged in a calm corner, as soon as they're finished and de-escalated, then they will come back to the task. So they cannot escape the task if they choose to go take a break. And we're just removing that physical guidance prompt. All throughout, we want to praise compliance. So especially if they're not engaging in escape maintain behavior and they're doing it, immediately it's like, holy smokes, thank you so much for doing it. It's big, it's loud. And sometimes I'll even slide in there and start doing the task that I asked them to do to let them escape from it in general. So they don't have to engage in it, because I'm going to increase the likelihood that they're going to come over and do the dishes again quickly, because I just gave them negative reinforcement by removing an aversive task to increase the likelihood they're going to do that again, because mom's going to do the dishes, which is really fun. But if they do engage in behavior, you can say, yep, that's how we walk to the kitchen sink. We're picking up the cup. This is how we clean it. And we're giving that bland feedback when they are compliant, because we just worked really hard to get their instructional control. And we worked really hard to get them to come over there. But we don't want to give too much reinforcement for that type of behavior, because we want to reinforce the most appropriate response, which is doing it quickly. On the inverse of getting out of negative reinforcement, the individual can ask for a break themselves and just say, I want a break. And it lets them escape the task. We do this as adults all the time. And it's a nice way for children to learn how to escape aversive events too. Saying I want a break, or can I use the restroom? That's a big one, especially my high school students. They love to use the restroom a lot. So keeping that in mind, that it doesn't always have to look like doing your task for your children. All right, due to time, I'm looking at where we are. This particular slide, there's things that we just do as humans that feel good. Sometimes people bounce their legs up and down. My Mima does this with her thumbs. It's just something that is highly preferred to the individual, that's available to them, that they can engage in. And I would like you guys to be aware of that when you're doing your assessments, that the child may just like to be and sit in their comfy chair and rock, because that feels good to them. And I'm not to discourage that behavior, but teach them where they can engage in that actual behavior, and be able to feel some of those internal reinforcers that we don't get to control. If this does become concerning, that's when we might put in a behavioral remediation plan. Sometimes these self-stimulatory behaviors are an excess, and we have to curb it back a little bit. Or we teach that, like I said, the appropriate place to be when we engage in this self-stimulatory behavior. So we don't want to lose sight that this is still happening for all individuals. Okay, so just as a wrap up, this is not a magic pill. It's a long-term commitment to systems change for effective practices to stay and happen over time. And it has to be consistently done by all caregivers within that individual's environment, which is why I highly encourage for families with multiple children that it's clearly talked about between both caregivers, all of the siblings, and it's publicly acknowledged when positive behaviors are happening and clear consequences are given for problem behaviors. So people and the children within the community and environment can take you seriously and know that you mean business because you're following what is expected. We are monitoring and regularly giving feedback to individuals who are participating in the system, as well as, again, analyzing that data as we talked about, because we want these skills to generalize across environments. So if I'm using this at school, I want my kids to go home and use it in their home environments with their families. If their families aren't getting clinic services all day. If I have a family in the home, I want these skills to transition to the school and vice versa, or with other family members, because we really want to see overall community growth and generalization for a good quality of life for our communities as a whole. So If you have any questions, please feel free. My email is below. I really appreciate you guys and all the time. I'm sorry I didn't have any more time. I'm willing to stay after if there are any questions. Go ahead and check out the Red Cap survey. Thank you, Cassie, again for putting that in there as our checkout. I'm looking for feedback. I really want to make this big and get some community outreach for across the Northeast Kansas and across the state of Kansas would be lovely. So any feedback would be greatly appreciated. So I thank you guys for your time, and I'll be here if you have questions. I'm going to see if I can turn off our unmute everybody. So if you would like to unmute, I'm unmuting you by choice. So thank you, Alice, for adding in our next training dates. I'm going to copy this real quick. Hopefully from our chats and get those into this PowerPoint. So our next Parent Cafe is March 3rd, where we talk about establishing and maintaining routines. March 24th is noticing and understanding your child's social emotional health, pandemic edition. And April 14th, staying connected while being safe. It's community readiness and talking about community readiness during a pandemic, which is so huge. Yes. Yay.
Yay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys. I hope you guys have a great night, and I look forward to seeing emails from you guys if you have any questions.
And so Rahel, it looks like can we copy that? Can we save the chat, Alice?
Yep, I have.
Yes, it should, the chat should save, and we can email Rachel any information we have. And also, Rachel, please feel free to spread the word to your friends and then other people that might be interested in this series.
Thank you, guys. This is a very passionate topic of mine. So thanks for listening, and I hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Kayla, good night.
Good night.